have freedom of speech in this country. That means people can say whatever they want, and they shouldn't be given the death penalty for it, and they shouldn't be given death threats for saying things. Did the people that mocked the victims of Grenfell break the law?
Just to make a point on what you've just said before we get on to the next topic. I never said that nobody should be held responsible for what they say. If I make a note of your address, and if I said Julian must die, I'm a Muslim, he said this, get him, kill him, I should be held responsible for what I'm saying. If
of course,
what I'm saying causes hell for others, then I must be in jail, or I must be dealt with accordingly.
I'm exaggerating what we mean by freedom of speech so we can see where the line is drawn. And
well, there is no freedom of speech. Because if you have a restriction, then there is no freedom. So there is no freedom of speech, is there?
There is, to the point until you're threatening someone.
If there is a point for freedom of speech, then it's not freedom of speech.
Is it that black and white that it's either all or nothing?
Well, absolutely. If there is a limitation or something, then it cannot...
Do some societies not have more freedom of speech than others?
They may have more speech, they won't have more freedom of speech. If they was to say the same thing in the first sentence, that would make them halt their remarks at the last sentence. It's not freedom of speech, it's just speech.
Okay. So, the individuals that mocked the Grenfell Tower tragedy by creating a bonfire effigy of Grenfell Tower, it's pretty disgusting what they did.
And you know what's more disgusting?
What's that?
What's more disgusting is if it was I, as a Muslim man, if I was to have a bonfire of the Holocaust or of the Twin Towers or anything as such, you would have me in jail, rotting in jail. In fact, you would keep me in jail for the next 100 years or so if you could. But yeah, because it's white people and because of what Sinead O'Connor said, this is what she was saying, that this is just unfair. Get a black man to set a light to something, a black man who is Muslim, or even he doesn't even have to be Muslim. I would assure you that this news will be in the papers all over this world.
Did the man who... what do you think happened to the guy who burnt the poppies? I mean, this is a good example. It's sort of what you said. A Muslim extremist punished for burning poppies on Remembrance Day. What do you think happened to him? You're saying probably in jail.
If he's not in jail, he's certainly on the...
Imdadur Chowdhury, a member of Muslims Against Crusades, was guilty of a calculated and deliberate insult to the dead and those who mourned them when he burned 2 large plastic poppies during a 2-minute silence. So he did what you said. What do you think happened to him?
Well, you see, this is the interesting thing that we have in this media. The old saying that the truth in the media is a bunch of lies that haven't been heard. This man set alight poppies, and if I was to buy 1,000 poppies and set them alight, I wouldn't do that. But if I was, then I would have the same ramifications that this Muslim person did. But what would be my reason for?
What do you think his punishment was?
Well, what
was his punishment?
Well, what do you think? It's evident.
I know what it is. I've got it in front of me, but I want you to guess what his punishment was.
Well, I assume he was jailed and he was fined, and if he wasn't, he was certainly on a list that...
He was fined £50.
He was fined £50, but look, you are talking about poppies, and you are talking about...
Is it not a similar example? Millions gave their life.
No, it's not. Millions...
And he's mocking it.
No, it's not.
I mean, many Muslims gave their life as well. I'm not sure why he would burn the poppy.
Well, I'll tell you why he would burn the poppies. And it's the same reason that if I was to burn the poppies, which I have no intention to do, I would burn the poppies not so I can mock the millions of lives that were lost 100 years ago. I would mock the fact that there has been no change. Hundreds of millions of lives have been lost, and still today, millions of lives and lies are being told, and millions of lies are still lost in wars all over the world. In 1945, when they came up with the pink poppy that said "No more war," that was quickly taken off the shelf because people want more war. The governments of this world want war, and his mockery. And I'm not defending him. I have no idea who he was or what his case was. I have nothing to do with him.
Well, no problem. But I just think that you imagined that were a Muslim to do something similar, he would be banged up in jail. And we found the example, and this gentleman shouted, "For the sake of Allah, our dead are in paradise, your dead are in hell." And he stirred up hate. Stir up hate against Muslims and you'll rightly get community service or jail. Stir up hate against non-Muslims and you'll get less than a speeding ticket. This is what they're saying. This is from The Economist. What kind of deterrent is £50 to other Islamic fascists bent on sowing hate throughout Britain?
Look, man.
So, you know, if you can give me another example where a Muslim has been jailed for... I know I'm not saying Islam doesn't get slated in the news and in the gutter press, but there's a real life example of a Muslim doing something similar to the Grenfell Tower mockery. And the victims in the Grenfell Tower were not all Muslim, obviously. They were people from all different
all right, Julian, give me...
walks of life. But I think there was a Islamophobic slant on their mock of Grenfell Tower because they made Islamophobic remarks in the video. So in that sense, perhaps they have broken the law.
All right, Julian.
What say you?
All right, Julian. All right, let me put a show on for a minute, yeah.
Go ahead, yeah, go. The mic is yours.
I think it's very hypocritical for you to have me on this show and to bring this comparison where we have just lost 70 plus people, mainly black people, mainly Muslim people, mainly refugee people, who have just lost their lives. They are not cold in their graves, if they even found their bodies. And as they lay dead, and as they are in the ground, people who are alive and well and had their whole life in front of them, as they were in that horrible position and sadly lost their lives, we have English white people who are making a mockery of dead human beings. I don't give a damn if they're Muslims. I don't care if they're white or black or working class or upper class. These were human beings that lost their lives. And for someone to stand up and have a bonfire and laugh like the devils that they are, and to now be in a position where they are walking freely without any real major consequences, with no news. You can phone all over America, and as I'm aware, you have contacts all over this world. Phone them and ask them, and they will not be able to give you one name or give you details of this unbelievable situation. I'm not saying that this is a Muslim thing. I'm just simply saying that it's unfair for you to bring up something that happened 100 years ago, and for one Muslim man and 6 or 7 or 8 of these English people to stand around a bonfire, and the fire, the smoke, the smell is still in the air around Grenfell. And for something that happened 100 years ago, and for the man to say and bring his own faith, the poppy burner, whoever he is, whoever he was, and I'm sure that he is on a watch list, and rightly so. I feel it's unfair for you to bring this up, and this is an unfair comparison, with all due respect.
It's the closest comparison I could find. Perhaps that's because there are so few, and maybe Muslims don't do things like this, and that's a good thing. It's as close as I could get.
However close,
yeah.
However close it can get, it is an unfair comparison. I think it's unfair for you to bring this up in the manner that you have brought this up.
Have you got a better one?
No, sir, I have not seen anything of this nature before, so I cannot give you a comparison, and I will not give you the comparison of poppy burning. It's not the same for somebody to burn a poppy. If I was to buy a poppy and burn it, it's not the same for people to laugh and mock and say, hey, look at the, stay where you are. The fire brigade's coming. No, don't come down. And have figures that seem to be brown and black.
If you look into what Bonfire Night is actually all about from its history and burning the effigy of a guy, some people find it to be an anti-Catholic celebration, or an anti-Catholic hateful festival. That's for another story, and that's 300, 400 years ago. The First World War is 100 years ago. Grenfell is obviously only 1 year ago, and as you say, it's still fresh in the mind. I can't find a comparison. Maybe Muslims don't do those sort of hate crimes. I went for the closest I could get, which was the poppy. If you haven't got another equivalent example, I don't know how then you can make a guess as to what would happen to a Muslim if they did it.
Well, I can tell you what would happen to a Muslim.
But how can you tell me if there's no example?
Because I've been living in this country my whole life. This is why I can tell you. I know what happens here. As long as we stay in our lane, as long as we keep our mouth shut, as long as we drive your taxis, as long as we take your drunk kids home, as long as we deliver your pizzas and serve you food, as long as we clean your homes and look after your kids and teach your kids in your schools, everything is fine. But the moment somebody stands up to express their thoughts, to express the reality and the injustice that's happening all over this world by white people, just as Sinead O'Connor said, then you look at us like we're devils. You look at us like we are people who are terrorists and evil, when we are simply speaking the truth.
Can you give me an example of someone who's done that? Or maybe you're giving Sinead O'Connor as an example. My last question for you is, who is more guilty? The idiots that made a Grenfell Tower effigy, or the people that signed off the cladding on the tower itself to save a bit of money at the expense of the poor that led to the death of dozens of people? Who's more guilty?
Well, the cladding which was put all over those buildings, I'm sure that those people were unaware of the consequences of what they did, and I'm sure there's been an inquiry.
Well,
and so
the consequences were worse. Corporate manslaughter versus hate speech.
Well, corporate manslaughter, just in its title itself, there is somewhat of a vindication, because these people were, as I say, unaware of the tragic and painful circumstances that those people would be put in. With the bonfire, it's a mockery, it's a hate, and it depends on the hate crime. Where can hate lead? Those people were not good people. And I am unaware of their color, but I assume they were white, irrespective of their color or irrespective of their faith or their class. I say that those people are terrible human beings, and they will partake in many crimes, and I assure you, throughout their lives.
It's just, from what I can see, it's more emotive, it hits more headlines, but actually the corporate property owners that cut corners because they don't give a damn about poor people, they actually have blood on their hands. The other people are hateful, and I wouldn't want to spend any time with them. They're both guilty, but I see a discrepancy in the way that our society leaps on hating one and lets the other rich people get away with it.
I disagree with you. If they don't like poor people, that's fine. If you don't like them, you don't like them. That's your thing. That's your problem. That's your issue. But to be fair to those people, I'm sure that they were unaware of what would take place. They cut corners, yes. But if you can prove that they cut corners knowing full well that those people would meet the tragic end that they did meet, then we have a case. But unfortunately, or rightly so, there has been no case as such so far.